David, thanks. The U.S. Senate will soon take up legislation adding additional requirements many Republicans say will prevent non-citizens from voting in U.S. elections, something that is already against the law. The Save America Act just passed by 5 votes in the U.S. House, with opposition from all but one Democrat. Tonight, we asked people in Northeast Wisconsin for their thoughts.
G48.
In Grand Chute every Thursday night, the American Legion is a popular spot for bingo, especially among local veterans.
Oh, 61.
But just 24 hours after the passing of the SAVE Act by the U.S. House, people like Greg Heino sounded off, saying the legislation requiring proof of citizenship to vote in federal elections goes a bit too far.
Photo ID is a necessity, and we have it in Wisconsin, and we should, but proof of citizenship should be done by the government. I thought that was done when we started with real IDs, but apparently real ID doesn't prove citizenship, although most of us had to get the birth certificate to get a real ID.
If the SAVE Act was signed into law, it will require voters to prove citizenship who aren't already registered, and effectively end online voter registration and mail-in ballots. What's unclear is whether showing a real ID versus a passport or birth certificate would be acceptable. Those details have yet to be clarified.
I am assuming that the Wisconsin ID, real ID now that we pretty much were required to get in Wisconsin, that will serve as appropriate a document to use. You know, that hasn't been clear and everything, but birth certificates, if we were born, we all have a birth certificate.
Photo ID when showing up at a polling place would also become law across the country. One person we spoke to who supports the legislation is Vern Noel, whose wife wasn't born in the U.S., and he says did a lot of work to become a citizen.
We went through the effort. We paid the money to do it all and all that. We did all the stuff you needed. So I feel that to vote in the United States, you should be a citizen and qualify for it.
The SAVE Act is expected to face hurdles in the U.S. Senate, where 60 votes are required for it to pass, meaning several Democrats would need to cross party lines to meet that threshold, avoiding a filibuster. Senator Ron Johnson said in a statement he will vote in favor of this. Senator Tammy Baldwin says she will not.